Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you at the third panel of today's day of the four-day financial event Finweek, which started on Monday, opened by Minister of Finance of Slovakia, Mr. Eduard Heger, and through the days it went through the finance during the crisis, the premise in finance, Invest Summit, and today's as one of the future topics is focused on the FinTech at the event of Fintechsummit. The third panel of today's day is focused on the artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the main question of this panel is where it does go next. First, let me please introduce the distinguished speakers of this panel, the people who are really experts on various areas of this complicated topic. So here with me in the studio, this is Mr. Richard Huga, co-founder of the Nettle company, and online, let me welcome Mr. Igor Teshinsky, who is co-founder of IntelliBonds. Mr. Bob Spence from UK, who is the business development specialist of the company GetSpence. Mr. I.Štefanec, who is Slovakian member of the European Parliament. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And Mr. Jakub Ilner from the Czech Republic, who is a chief solution architect of Oracle. Welcome.
Hello, good afternoon.
Our panel is, compared to the previous ones who were really systematical about the development of this new market, is focused on the development of new technologies, one of the most complicated in the market. So maybe to really connect that with the fintech and with the services, let me first ask you all for the very first round to really introduce your attitude to how the technology is becoming a fine tool to transfer services maybe into kind of an experience. How can all this work in something which is originally so much conservative and decent as the financial products, but is really changing? So maybe we can really start with Mr. Huga here in studio.
Thank you very much. It's a great question. Certainly, as specialists in conversational artificial intelligence, building chatbots, virtual agents, working with natural language processing and machine learning and neural networks, we see a huge shift, certainly in other areas of e-commerce, leveraging these kinds of technologies. Back in around 2016, interestingly, Facebook, when it opened up its platform for chatbots, within 6 months, there were already hundreds of thousands of chatbots already built on that platform. And considering that mobile e-commerce, certainly, and mobile e-commerce is growing tremendously across a lot of different environments, it would be natural for FinTech to follow suit. FinTech naturally is a little more conservative, but because a lot of other industries, such as telco and consumer goods industries, are leveraging the benefits of conversational AI, FinTech absolutely has to follow. So we see huge potential for FinTech. Banks, insurance companies, brokerages, other FinTech services are starting to see the benefits as well. We see a little bit of a shift. Usually it happens that the adoption rate in the US and Western Europe is a little bit quicker. Certainly in Europe, Scandinavia has come on board much more quickly. And we're seeing Central and Eastern European region also coming on board now as well. So we're very excited about the prospects.
And Mr. Teshinsky, you're really focusing on the financial products as itself. How do you see this same question?
Yeah, from our perspective, I mean, we obviously spend most of the time working with the UK or US clients, so we can say that the adoption rate is definitely increasing, and our specific focus is on wealth management and asset management. And we see that because of the intense competition in that area of the financial services, what you end up seeing is that the costs are coming up, and fees for asset management are coming down, and ultimately many products become non-viable, or from the margin perspective for the asset managers and wealth managers and the banks with asset management arm, is not becoming any more lucrative or attractive product to manage. But with the deployment of AI, and if you combine AI with robotic process automation, you end up in the situations where work that was done previously by 20 people using obsolete tools now can be done by 2 or 3 people, and you can launch new product or new services which serve the client much better and also become much more attractive from the profitability perspective of the bank or institutional asset management company.
Okay, as I'm not sure if we can hear it, Mr. Spence, now we have we cannot hear nearly anything, but maybe you can hear us, so please, if you can address this question about the transformation, these services, not only to experience, but concerning your focus, maybe even to services.
Well, I can hear you clearly. So I'm in the north of England. I'm a sales professional, so I sell technology at a corporate level, and I think that the thing about this is to set realistic expectations. I think that's what the CIO needs to do, and I need to identify where this technology will fit in, and then create the right organizational structure to make the best use of the technology. From my experience in London, the greatest AI benefit is AI augmentation, which is where you combine the human and the artificial intelligence to get them to complement each other. And in terms of selling this technology, that appears to be the space to play in. I would also suggest that some of the technology is ahead of where the buyers are. So if you're developing technology that's too far in front of where the buyers are who've got to implement it, that may slow the evolution down. So that's my first input into this forum.
Thank you very much. Mr. Štefanec, as even though we usually do not like politicians to really take care about the financial experiments, your task is much more harder because it's necessary to combine the new technology and the new approach in the financial services to your expected task to take care about us as citizens. How do you see this area and how to combine these sometimes antagonic systems?
First of all, thank you very much for your compliment. I do appreciate that. I do believe that artificial intelligence will play a major role in digital transformation. And let me start also with the one remark, what we are doing in the European Parliament. Just yesterday, we established a special committee on digital transformation, a special committee on artificial intelligence in digital age. So we really deal with this issue. We talk about the best suited framework in order to develop the potential for artificial intelligence. In terms of use, I see major potential in medicine, in industry, with regard to predictive maintenance, quality inspections, or supply chain optimization. Or if we talk about financial services and banking, I see the potential use in risk assessment, trading, and managing finance. So still there is a lot of potential, and I think it's a challenge for all politicians to create the right framework for development of artificial intelligence. If I talk about these challenges, I think one is that final decision making must be kept on a human being. And second challenge is also about data ownership, because we talk about a huge amount of data, and I think it must be very clear who owns data and who owns the responsibility about this issue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Illner, as even in new areas, we all, and as customers, expect the large technology corporations to give us toolboxes or the solutions how to deal with it, not only working but also safe and secure. How do you see the opportunities or maybe the new approaches in this area?
Okay, good afternoon. Well, I have to say that for me, the artificial intelligence and machine learning and other types of AI is something that the banks and the financial services companies I work with started to work with many years ago. So it's not really something new, right? I think that at this moment, what the banks are seeing is that it's not really about just adopting AI, but it's really about the whole ecosystem of the data management. So there is a buzzword that the banks and the other organizations that they are trying to become data driven, meaning it's not only about AI, which is one component of this transformation. It's about the whole usage of data and data governance and data security, having the right applications that are being able to use this data, having them in the right time as quickly as possible. So the question for me is actually that the customers we are working with, they want to transform their IT to be able to provide these capabilities. And we as a services and technology provider, we have we have an AI platform available in the cloud, which provides this, and we also try to embed the AI into the SaaS applications that we are using. So that's the second side, not just platform, but actually the applications like analytics or ERP or banking platform. They all have a kind of AI implemented in it so that the customers don't have to do it themselves.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I think it's now very clear what benefits can the businesses, all kinds, including the financial services, take from using this modern technological tools. But maybe what maybe beside or above the technology of conversational artificial intelligence can the customers or the clients can take, and what benefits are offered to them? Maybe first I would try to ask Mr. Těšínský, because I think he also has some case studies and I hope we will hear him well.
Sure, can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
Great. Sorry, so I don't know what went wrong earlier on, but well, I'm glad that you can hear me now. For us, it's not necessarily just about the conversational AI, because what we are trying to build, or what we have built for some of our clients, is AI assistants. What we mean by that is effectively the workflow tool that helps with the workflow of investment professionals. And for us, the conversational aspect is important, but only to the extent, because if you are in the front office of a bank, or if you are in the front office of institutional asset managers, you have many people working in that space, and sometimes having conversational AI is not necessarily what they want. They would prefer having some sort of interfaces where they can interact with AI-powered bots, or they prefer some sort of chat option, just because of the potential noise that would occur in the instances where you have many people asking questions to a certain solution. So for us, conversational AI is important, but it's not necessarily something we would prefer. In our case, assistant means more about having the chat functionality with the AI bots in the background, and having the interfaces where people and bots can interact. And effectively, we have done a couple of case studies on different use cases in the past to kind of illustrate what would happen if, let's say, you have the assistant deployed in a pension fund, or if you have the assistant deployed in the a family office, and how these tools can help you to become much more efficient as a person. But we still think that the AI is really the measure that support people, and we clearly cannot, at this moment in time, replace human component in the workflow. I think it's absolutely crucial, because there are many situations where AI just simply cannot handle the problem. but unique human insight, when combined with AI, they can do it.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, as we are living quite strange times, maybe I will add to this question, the social contact, which we can see really in our debate, is not as it used to be. Is it somehow influencing the way, or maybe the expectations of your customers for maybe not only the conversation about giving information, but also concerning the functional solutions, as you just described, maybe some kind of a social competencies of the technology, or I mean, like, is it for them part of the experience, maybe because they like technologies, maybe because they have kind of a lack of conversation to human beings?
Well, from my perspective, I haven't had that instance. I mean, that kind of requests or demands from the end client. Ultimately, what we bring in is the option to combine those tools with, let's say, Zoom or the other functionalities which allow you to talk to the other people. What the main benefits of really our tool is, and because it's based in the cloud, is that currently working from home very often or from multiple different locations across the globe. And because the platform is cloud-based, whatever you do in cloud happens in the cloud and is shared with everybody in real time. So there are no issues with, let's say, now you're working from home and you need to have access to Bloomberg terminal, but you have to have a special setup for that, or you have some special software for that. In our instance, those people can communicate and can interact within the cloud, and whatever happens in the cloud happens in real time and share with everybody in real time. And the challenges triggered by COVID and working from home are resolved by using cloud-based platforms, especially if you have chat options combined with the cloud-based platform, and you have interactive AI human sort of toolkit embedded where you can effectively leverage the computing power of bots, but you also can bring in the unique human insights people have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Guga, what do you think about, well, I mean, to the maybe more benefits to the customers for the topic, how more, or from your perspective, can this technology offer to the clients?
Sure. So if I was to look back and see the evolution of digital banking, shall we say, going back all the way to the mid to late 60s when we started with the ATM. So that was the first advance that you could actually go not to the branch and to an individual, but you could go to a machine and take out your money. Shortly thereafter, you got telephone banking through using IVRs, interactive voice recognition systems, and then we went to online banking in the late 90s, early 2000s. Ultimately to mobile banking, since almost everybody now has a smartphone and they do all sorts of different things with their smartphone. So that was about 2010, 12, all the way to the evolution of what we see now as conversational banking, where we actually see the sort of use of different technologies. We obviously use conversational platforms, messaging apps, big data, analytics around big data, and certainly conversational user interfaces. And that could be a voice or a text-based user interface. And this is the way people are. I don't like talking about millennials or Generation X or Z or Y or whichever generation it is. But these are the new clients. These are the people that are expecting to use these technologies. If you look at back in 2016, messaging applications such as WeChat or WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger actually exceeded online activity versus social media. So there were more people using messaging apps on an active monthly basis than they were using social media. It's now estimated that over 4.5 billion, almost 5 billion people are messaging on a daily basis. So customers are absolutely accustomed to this. They expect this from their service providers, and banks see this as a benefit. And just think about what are the benefits of using artificially augmented virtual assistants. They're available 24/7. I don't know about yourself, but I like to do my banking maybe on a Sunday afternoon when the bank isn't open, or maybe in an evening when I get an email and it's 11 o'clock and I need to do something, I can go online and do that. So certainly 24/7 availability, and answering questions that are repetitive. To customer support people, they don't like answering, and employee and customer satisfaction grow when customers can ask anytime, but employees don't like answering questions. Where's the nearest branch? What's my bank balance? Simple questions that are repetitive day in and day out, so you can increase employee satisfaction as well by redeploying employees to more strategically oriented areas and having the bots answer those questions. It's not, I absolutely believe that there has to be the right balance between the bot and the agent, meaning that you have to have a hybrid scenario, as was already mentioned here, where if the bot can't answer the question or it gets stuck, it can naturally transition to an agent and maintain that continuity of experience. And I believe that customers also appreciate this, and they also appreciate that they're using technologies that they're familiar with and customized to, such as the messaging apps, and it's just a natural extension for them. The banks, the fin service companies have to develop the technologies so that they're personalized and that they feel good, that they're not robotic, which has been sort of the experience in the past. And then customers can also leverage capabilities of cognitive commerce or conversational commerce where they can actually make purchases, not just ask questions. And banks see this as a huge potential as well.
I see. As there are more and more opportunities, not only to take information, but also to really purchase new services or products. Maybe one short or quick question to Mr. Štefanec. Does the regulator, in your case, the European Commission and its bodies, does it see this area as something which needs some new kind of customer protection in anything? Because there are also, if we compare this to the social network or social media, there are also some initiatives how to really, at least, if not regulate, then really try to manage these systems.
From my point of view, we have to at least keep the same standard of consumer protection. So I don't think it's necessary to develop new models of consumer protection, but at least to keep the same. It's the matter of fact that European consumer protection is the highest, the standard is the highest in comparison with the rest of the world. And the ambition in the European Parliament is to keep this consumer protection also for future. I think it's not necessary to develop new standards, but just to keep those as we have already set up. But as you mentioned, for example, social networks, of course, we follow new challenges which are coming together with, for example, disinformation campaign, with fake news and so on. And we talk also with the owners of social networks about how to tackle this challenge. And I'm happy to say this discussion is moving forward. In comparison with situation like 5 years ago, the owners of social networks, they refuse to take responsibility. It's not the case nowadays. Now they see their share responsibility, so it's not only up to the legislators to create this network, but also it's up to good cooperation with the owners of social networks to develop the right framework which will on one side keep consumer satisfaction and keep the same standards of consumer protection, but at the same time to allow, let's say, new application or new development, new research and innovation projects also to grow. So we have to keep this balance.
Extend this question a little, as we are coming from the services or maybe the informational content to really the solution supporting or even solution made by the intelligent machines, because artificial intelligence is really this kind of technology. It's always the question of the responsibility coming somehow between the ethics or moral issues, but also it must be somehow reflected in the legislation, because those are the rules to really solve any problems that will definitely occur. what's the current maybe stage of developing this kind of legislation, or maybe the issues the regulators are facing now?
Actually, it's a very, very good question, because that's exactly the topic for the committee. I mentioned that yesterday we established a new special committee on artificial intelligence in digital age. That's the principal question what we discuss. Now there are open many public consultation in the European Parliament and European Commission where we discuss this issue. So nothing is fixed, nothing is solved, because we try to look on this issue from many perspectives, from different point of view. But in most cases, it ends up in ethical question. At the end, most issues related to artificial intelligence, at the end, it is the ethical issue, which finally we have to look at to this issue from this perspective. So nothing is fixed, but there is a lot of discussions, and I welcome discussion like this today, and I do believe we can discuss this issue also at our committee in the European Parliament. So what we discussed, just to be more concrete, is the issue of, for example, digital identity, the issue of data security, the issue of common European standard, and also some standardization worldwide, because I think it wouldn't be wise to develop something what would be different in EU in comparison with the rest of the world. So I think cooperation also with US and Aisha in this point is also quite important. So we don't want to deal with this issue separately, but cooperation is also important.
Now I turn that question to the rest of the speakers, to all of you or any of you who is interested. Now you have the opportunity to maybe ask, or just to mention the obstacles you see in the environment, in the rules, in the legislation, or maybe even in some behavior of the clients, of the customers, which need to be somehow solved, or at least regulated, or at least somehow explained, and which are maybe now seen as obstacles to the development of this field and using artificial intelligence in financial services. So, any of you?
Okay, so I will start. I will mention one topic which I came across quite recently, and that's the need for the artificial intelligence to explain the decision it made. So basically, it's a question of if we have some algorithm which decides something, or which provides input to some decision, how are we able to explain how the decision was made? So that's a specific topic of AI which we call explainability. And for several use cases, it's quite important to actually find out what were the key features, what were the key attributes that contributed to the decision. And this is something where I need more development will be needed in the future, because of course there are many use cases where you just don't need to really explain, where you are just looking at the success of these decisions. But once you go into key decisions that impact the customer, for example, like the decision if he will be given a loan or not, it's important to have a clear idea how the algorithm came to the decision and what were the influencing factors. So this is something where we are working on, and I guess I hope there will be a significant development in the future for this as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, gentlemen.
I can just say that I'm all for the right kinds of regulations, but I like to keep things also simple and pragmatic so that people can adopt and innovate in the technological space. I do agree that working with digital identity and security is super important, and I think GDPR and a lot of other policies and programs that are in place are very great. We also work to help augment customers who are deploying our technologies to leverage some of the capabilities that we have to enable these kinds of programs. For example, we use optical character recognition to identify digital identity cards. We even have a connector to the Ministry of the Interior here in Slovakia so that we can check the fraud. Is the card lost, stolen, expired, so that when there is a digital onboarding process at a bank or an insurance company or a telco, no fraud is started there. We also deploy or allow our customers to deploy on-premise in their own data centers so that they can leverage their already enabled GDPR processes and programs to be in place so that they don't have to deploy the technology, the AI technology, to some sort of cloud-based server that's maybe provided by some of the other large vendors. That way they can manage the GDPR and the data privacy in their own facilities with their own techniques, and it reduces the risk for them and also for the customer, which increases trust for the customer. So we like to work with the policies that are in place in Europe and help customers actually achieve their goals in that area as well.
Mm-hmm. Keep the question just a second valid for one more moment. So Mr. Těšínský is really welcome. But I would just add: is there anything somehow affecting this topic? Is maybe the little controversial dimension of the crypto dimension of this area of all the fintech solutions, as sometimes they are even connected to the fears of becoming a new bubble in the economy or anything. But maybe your contribution was just to really the environment or the legislation. So.
I think, sorry, my initial sort of answer was more focused on the legislation as well. And I mean, we are not necessarily focusing on the consumers. Our sort of business focus is B2B. So we are mostly working with the institutional clients. And what we find that regulations are still important, but just to follow up on the topic of explainability, for example, clients are demanding explainability. So if we have the algorithm generating risk recommendations or trade idea, etc., everybody wants to see what are the components, what was the process, the algorithm came up with certain output. So whether you have the regulations in place or you don't have regulations in place, I think for the institutional client, they would demand these sort of rules automatically because their business is about providing the explanation to the end client or to the asset owner. So from that space, I don't think that regulations are that much necessary. I clearly see that there is much more importance to have regulations in the consumer space. And when you are talking about a cryptocurrency or cryptocurrencies, I think it became very popular across many investors, especially in Western Europe. I'm not sure what is the case in Slovakia nowadays. I mean, even I'm investing in crypto. And I have to say that the lack of regulations often lead to many people who are not familiar with what the crypto is and what are the key drivers behind the performance of those currencies are just buying into something which they have no idea of. And there should be some regulations in place to protect those consumers. And I think crypto is important. I think there are many benefits to it, but I think there should be a set of rules or set of regulations in place to make sure that it is used in the right way and definitely the consumer is protected.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Mr. Spence, do you have something or shall we?
No, not at this point around regulation. I'm afraid I don't think I can contribute anything else that's been said, to be fair.
Okay, so, after this part, I see you guys are much more into technology or the development stuff than the regulations and any other limitations. So now I switch to really technological and innovation question. What's the main innovation issue for the field of the artificial intelligence? For many people, it's just, they see the main point of it, the machine learning. For some, what I call, but I'm not an IT guy, IT purists, they say that machine learning is not enough for the artificial intelligence, just for the ability to really formulate the criteria that must be met. What is but these issues are mostly made in the industrial applications. But how do you see them in maybe for the area of finance? Let's start with Mr. Teshinsky.
I mean, from my perspective, the main challenge is really data, but not necessarily there is not enough data, but the quality of data. You can feed in anything to a machine learning model and you can get some output on the other end. The problem is, unless you have data structured and prepared, you're not going to get the high quality output. And what we find ourselves doing most is really just structuring data, cleaning up the data, merging data from multiple data sets, so they can actually be used for machine learning. And that's, from the overall process of delivering some solution, is probably the longest part. I mean, we work with Moody's Analytics, we work with IHS Markit, and whilst they have a high quality data, when you're trying to combine those data sets, there is a lot of work that is needed before you can build anything. So from our perspective, before you can do any machine learning, before you can do any deep learning, you spend a lot of time really just making sure that the data quality is up to the standard you can use to build some advanced solutions. And to us, this is the biggest challenge at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Illner, do you agree on, maybe I extend this question concerning the data issue and some kind of a pre-filtering before the right data are used for the right decisions? There is a question of the edge computing, but usually for more decentralized systems, like, I don't know, manufacturing machines. How is it in your area, and how do you see it from the perspective of a technology company?
Well, I have to agree that the data is the real issue, not the application of models, right? So we are trying to define architectures where the data is being collected from whatever internal and external sources you have, possibly in real time. And then we try to do some preparation of these raw data so they can be consumed by multiple users, and AI and machine learning and other applications. I mean, there are many users for the data. So we try to create a kind of flow of data, and of course the quality is an issue. The quality is an issue on the at the point where the data are being created. It's an issue for the regulators. Another issue is to understand the lineage of the data, so to understand where the data is coming from. And another issue is actually to have the data at the right time, right? Because there are all the possible delays and technical issues with some legacy applications, with the obsolete IT in the banks and other companies, which actually prevent them to have the right data. So I would say it's all together. It's not an easy task, because many organizations have legacy data warehouses and other systems which are difficult to change or difficult to replace. But it's essential, because without that, the promises of AI will just not work. Right?
I'll ask you about the issues with the regulators. Maybe you can use the opportunity to ask it, Mr. I.Štefanec. What are the biggest legislation or regulators issues with the data, or maybe how it's connected with the localizations of the data warehouses or other ways of how not only how but also where to handle with the data? I mean, is it like as you mentioned it, Mr. Illner? Do you think it is something what regulator, for example, European Commission, should solve somehow?
Okay, so sorry, I did not saw that this question is aimed at me, but I think that the regulator should give overall framework, but mostly, unless it's customer-related data or some data which has to be collected for the regulatory purposes. I think it's mostly up to the organization. I mean, up to the bank or fintech organization itself to manage the data. I don't see much need to for the regulator to address this. Of course, with the exception of GDPR and all the data which are closely related to the customer and the way how they are used. But for quite a, I would say, vast majority of use cases, I don't see that these use cases have to be actually regulated, because they deal with the way how the company interact with customers, about the performance of their internal processes, about the way how they evaluate suppliers or profitability of products. These are things which are internal to the bank. They do not have to be regulated. I mean, it's my opinion.
Yes, Mr. Štefanec, what is your opinion, or maybe what are the ideas of European regulators to this issue? Is GDPR and this kind of regulations enough, or are there any future possible regulations for the area of data?
Currently, it is enough, but I do agree with my colleague speakers that now data should be focused on discussion. And basically, I see two major issues to talk. And first one is data security, and secondly, ownership of data. It must be clear who is responsible for data and who can deal with this data. I think it's crucial for also all aspects related to AI based on data. So security and ownership, I think those are the issues which we have to focus on. But also I do agree once again that we should not over-regulate this area, and the legislative framework should be very, very simple and shouldn't go further than it is necessary, particularly in terms of business to business. There must be very, very simple and very, very clear legislation, and we have to focus much more on consumer protection rather than to the regulation of business relations.
Okay. Another maybe technological issue. Oh, of course, if any of you isn't interested to this, maybe for the regulation data, it's okay. Maybe. Yes.
Yeah, just one last thing. I mean, when we are talking about the data and regulations, I think where the regulator on the EU can help is also on data access. Because, for example, in our instance, we work with pension funds, we work in investment managers, and but we find that there are many which are investing in the bond market. But there is no central pool which collects liquidity data, or there is no central pool which tells me the volume of transactions. And when I'm, let's say, comparing it to the US, the regulator build something which is called Trace, and they can provide you the trading volume on a daily basis for the fixed income securities or the bonds. In Europe, nothing like that exists. And often when you're trying to, as a pension fund, let's say, get out of the certain positions because the company will be facing a default or restructuring, you cannot do that because there is no liquidity in the market. There is no ability to execute that. If you have that information, there is not much you can do about this particular transaction. And it's because the regulator didn't build up this sort of framework which would allow for data aggregation across the EU and just building some sort of centralized pools in cooperations with the local governments, and just have access to, let's say, government bonds and corporate bonds into some sort of central pool or some sort of central database where banks or asset managers or pension funds can just go into it and just get the data. And I think this is where the regulator could really help, just create the environment which allow access or allow aggregations of the data in a format that can be consumed by the many user groups within the financial services.
Not only solving these technological issues, but also somehow modernizing the rules for the financial markets according to the new technology issues.
May I? If I make to comment this input, I do agree with that in terms of data access, we have some opportunity to improve, but those issues, they fall also under umbrella of building capital market union in the European Union, because generally European economy is more banking or economy in comparison with US, where a capital market is much more developed. So we are dealing with these issues, but this is not only about data access, it is about a broader view to improve capital market situation in the European Union and to build real capital market union.
Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe one more issue for being maybe combination of the new rules but also the technical development. I think one of you have already mentioned the question of secure digital identity as one of the issues. Is it something that is becoming maybe just the technological issue, or can that become even some kind of a safety issue, or security issue for the clients, customers, and at the secondary phase also for the providers or technological companies? What do you think, maybe?
This is not an area of my expertise, certainly, but certainly secure digital identity is super important, as we already mentioned, with respect to GDPR, data privacy. Mm-hmm. Honestly speaking, we try to enable all of the elements that are necessary for, again, we're mostly business to business, mm-hmm. To enable our customers or our vendors who then communicate with customers, put in the right mechanisms to manage the data privacy elements that they have as effectively as possible. Mm-hmm. Whether a central digital ID platform or framework would mm-hmm. help them, I suspect it would if it was like we've already talked about, practical mm-hmm. yes. and pragmatic and simple to use across borders. I think that could be helpful, mm-hmm. but it certainly the proof is in the pudding, and we'd have to see what they come up with.
That is maybe why I ask, even not as a technology issue, but if it's also your task to the maybe technology providers and stuff like that. So probably it is like that. Okay, maybe one another technological issue is the how to call it, the presentation or reputation of the artificial intelligence compared to the human agents or human providers of the services. Do you think it should somehow be emphasized that this is really a technology, or sometimes should it be designed to be like a human, or to really say, okay, so I can prevent your decisions from the mistakes humans make, and even advance the quality of the solutions? Maybe this is...
Maybe I'll start, and then certainly we can add. This is certainly an area for conversational artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. Even though it's evolved over the last 10 years tremendously compared to the 1960s and even 70s and 80s, and with the very, very scalable and cheap computing power, large amounts of data, as we've already mentioned. Of course, the data needs to be quality. A lot of different open source tools for natural language processing, machine learning. We're still a far way away from really being artificial intelligence and being able to manage maybe at the level that the marketing hype communicates to customers. So I absolutely believe that we need to let customers know that they're talking with a virtual agent or some sort of AI, that they know that they can then transition seamlessly to a human if mm-hmm. the AI can't support their requests or their decision support requirements. And this has to be a part of the overall experience, because you only have one chance or a couple of chances at the most to really create a good, engaging experience with the customer. Otherwise, they'll go to a different area. And honestly, we've seen this in the conversational AI space, which was super popular back in 2016, 2017. A lot of hype around that. A lot of Western companies, Western European companies, the US was deploying this at the customer service level, helping augment some customer support agents and and departments. And unfortunately, the expectations for those customers weren't met. There was more hype than what the technology could provide, and we want to be able to avoid that moving forward. So I absolutely believe that we should communicate that to customers that they are using artificial intelligence, but that they can transition to an agent, and an agent can then take them the rest of their journey, their customer journey.
Maybe before giving the same question to any of you, I will just extend it a little. Do you think it is necessary for the client always to know if they are served by the human agent or artificial intelligence, or how should it be combined? And this is really the question even for you as providers, but also for maybe Mr. Štefanec as for his personal opinion, or maybe the regulator's approach.
Yes, if I may start, the answer is definitely yes. This is the major issue of consumer protection. Consumer should be informed whether he or she talks directly with person or with somebody who is filled by AI, some robots. So this is the crucial point, and I do believe we should keep these consumer protections as the standard. And not only this, I think we should talk also about the possibility during this process to choose between using or not using AI approach. So the whole AI issue is a lot about trust. And if we create trust among citizens, I think we can definitely improve the processes. Definitely we can help to spread more AI practices among consumers, among the people.
Gentlemen?
Yeah. I'd like to add something, if that's possible. My background is with Barclays Bank International. I've also worked for Groupe Assurance Nationale, the French bank. More recently, Coutts Bank, the Strand, which is actually the bank the royal family use, although I've never met them. Certainly, at the wealth management end of banking, you've really got to make it clear what's going on. You truly have people are looking for personalized communication. So in terms of the interaction with the customer, I think you've got to flag it very, very early on in that piece of interaction that there are different pathways that they can undertake. And if people want to opt out of an AI process very early doors, you've got to give them that opportunity immediately. I can see where it can improve and streamline processes. Perhaps some of the lower value interaction could be carried by AI. But in general, you've got to put, I think, at the moment, right at the front end, you've got to communicate what's going on. You're interacting with a real person here, or you're not. That's what I think based on my experiences.
Mr. Češinsky, do you think the client of the future should be given the opportunity to choose between the technology really preventing from any mistakes or the human broker or the human partner as agent?
For me, it's about the selection. I mean, I strongly believe in collaboration between AI and human advisor or human wealth managers. I mean, as Bob said, you can have a robo-advisors to tell you where to invest your money, or you can have a person working with AI-powered tools to help you invest your money. And I think from my perspective, well, we are more on the B2B side, as I said, not necessarily focused on the end client, but people will figure out very quickly that they are chatting with bot, and certain questions don't get answers, or you get the sort of template answers. And ultimately, at some stage, person or agent or private banker or whoever is working within that specific business function has to come in. And from my perspective, it's really and truly about the collaborations between the people and bots to deliver end user experience, which would be much more sort of attractive for the consumer. And whether you have a high net worth individual trying to invest his money, or whether average person having his whatever 100,000 euro trying to invest it more wisely than just have it in the bank account and earning nothing. I think in all those instances, you need to have something to deal with sort of easy questions, which can deal kind of with the volume and general type of queries. And then to sort of help with the specific problems clients have. And in these instances, you need people. I mean, the AI is not as good at this moment in time.
A part of banking as well is around personal relations, and I'm absolutely online with what Igor said earlier, that these are tools. These are part of a toolkit. They don't actually at this moment supplant the human interaction. That they're tools. You can use those tools or not. But in general, especially in banking, more so now than ever, because it's so competitive. As much as anything, people are buying people. They're buying the experience, but people are buying people. And there's some kind of tipping point. I'm not quite sure where it is, where you've got to say, well, for this particular relationship, maybe 20% of it can be automated, or that particular type of relationship, maybe 80% can. But you've got to find that balance very, very early on in the use of this technology. Otherwise, you'll lose clients. You will absolutely lose clients, because they're not looking for a relationship based on what's most convenient for the bank. They're looking for a relationship that makes sense to them. And if they can't understand that relationship, then you're going to have client retention challenges. So I'm with Igor. I see them as additional tools rather than, at the moment, rather than kind of a standalone method of dealing with people.
Mm-hmm. And what I would think is we are talking about many new providers of maybe not only technological services, but the companies who are completely changing or creating a new ecosystem. So maybe what, in your perspective, are the new roles for not only technology providers or traditional financial services providers, as mostly banks or the banking houses with their supportive companies, but also the new completely new players in this field, because for example in the manufacturing industry there are a lot of SMEs or startups who can become really good providers of some products or suppliers, because they are strong in some markets for the local customers. But in such a conservative area with such an important or international product as money, so financial markets, is it possible maybe to create completely new ecosystems? And are there any members who are missing? And if yes, then what is the geographical distribution? Like now we see the London is really booming, and there are a lot of new projects, including some of your businesses. But is there any opportunity maybe for new locations to become important? And of course, we're sitting in Bratislava, so I ask about new locations like Bratislava. What's the opportunity for them, and maybe what's their role or the position in the future ecosystems?
I think I can maybe just start on this, because I do have a direct experience. I could obviously set up my company in Bratislava, as I am, so I can. But we decided to set up a company in London, and the reason being is that the legislation and regulatory environment for startups and for fintech companies in the UK is much more advanced. Probably most relevant sort of structure or legislations is in place in the UK, And I think that's a very important component. When you are funding startups, it's very difficult to raise capital in let's say, city of Bratislava. But in the UK and in London in particular, you have many venture capital firms, angel investors. There's whole ecosystem that was built to effectively support smart ideas. And it doesn't matter what background you come from, you can find the money to build a startup, and you can find the right investors, and you can find the people with relevant technical experience or skill set to turn your vision into the reality. Which is very, very hard to do if you haven't started yet and just catch up with London, for example. There is a lot of things that have to happen at the state level, and legislations and regulatory environment have to be set up first, and then you have to attract the talent. And Slovakia is a small market, so in terms of having the data scientists or having the engineers, etc., it is very difficult to source. And unless you can attract the talent from elsewhere, becoming sort of potential main fintech or startup hub for the evolution of new technology, it is quite challenging, especially because of the size of the economy and because of the size of the market and the opportunities and the tools and the skills such market can offer.
I'm glad you answered, because I had another question, especially for you. What will make you, or what can be the improvement which can make you make at least an affiliation here? Or what expertise can be relevant to be provided locally? For example, I don't know, there are quite some corporate financial services centers in Bratislava with a global competence. Is it something, or maybe is it just the talent, or are also some of the customers base which are really with the global presence? Is it something motivating for you?
I mean, from my perspective, one reason why we could maybe create a subsidiary in Slovakia is Brexit, obviously, and what happens with the access to the market outside of the when the UK is outside of the EU. So that could be one of the triggers. The other reasons, whether we would set up a center of excellence, let's say, or just having the IT function in there, or maybe just some sort of corporate business center, we are more focused on the sort of high value added tasks. So we are, let's say, looking at the pension fund industry, and we are looking at experts who are managing billions and trillions of dollars across Western economies. And, Slovakian market is small and doesn't necessarily have the right expertise. If I want to get a fixed income quant, for example, or if I want to have a data scientist who understands how to model inflations and interest rates, it is very rare skill set to find. And if I could find it in Slovakia, I would be very happy to do so, and I would be very happy to set up a center there and just potentially build a business out of there as well, in addition to our UK operations. But it's quite challenging currently, and just having talked to a couple of people prior to this event as well, just the market is too small, and the right skill set is difficult to find for the type of operations we have.
Mm-hmm. I'm also based in the UK, and I'm not British. And I think you just touched on two things there. I mean, first of all, it's not just data scientists. It's been able to select from a pool of data scientists. We're based in Shoreditch. I don't know where you're based, Igor, but whenever we're looking to subcontracts bits and pieces of the algorithm, I've almost got a beauty parade of talent to select from. For the record, the original algorithm came out of Wrocław, and I'm not Polish either, but we had to move over to the UK. Data science, it's as simple as that. I mean, I guess most of us on the call that are developing products, you don't know what you don't know, but you can be sure there's going to be some kind of bump in the road ahead. And London is just a place to find talent. And the other thing is, it's a more, as the sales guy, it's more of a target-rich environment. I'm more likely to be able to source clients and users in London than anywhere else. Although professionally, I've got great respect for the talent that I've met in Slovakia. I've been over to Slovakia, I think, 22 times, 23. So I know it's a mature place, but it's data science, and I'll end on that. It's data science.
Sorry.
Other important component is that you can form the partnership with universities here. So let's say we working with University College London, we get the interns from across the world actually coming for the jobs to us, and that's also important. You have direct linkage to academia, and academia is very supportive of corporate projects, which is quite unique. And I think the UK has a great advantage that they can offer that, because it's Oxford, it's Cambridge, it's London Business School, you name it. And if you combine all these skill sets together, it's just very, very unique and hard to replicate, I think.
I.Štefanec, however strong the hub of the FinTech London is, it's now currently not anymore in the regulation framework of the European Union. Are there any tools or maybe new ideas of how to somehow support the new development of FinTech in the remaining EU, including Slovakia, of course?
Yeah, I think what has been pointed out, it is related to education. And I think we have still here the challenge to improve significantly the education in Slovakia. And basically, this is the valid point for all EU countries, because it's the matter of fact that British education is much better. Therefore, the of talents, it's much better in London than in even in Berlin or Bratislava. That's the reality. So to change this situation, just we have to invest much more in education. And talking about AI, I think we have to include digital skills and digital, particularly AI skills, into curriculum, into the educational system. I think this is true not only from a consumer perspective, but also from a professional perspective for IT guys who work on AI programs, because still I see the lack of specialists and the lack of skills in this area. And this is only one part of this issue, education. Second issue, how to improve the situation, is to invest much more on AI. We talk particularly about AI. To much more on AI, if we see it from world perspective, Europe is tracking behind US and even behind Asian countries. So now, if we talk about economic recovery after Corona crisis, we have to think about this and to involve into recovery plan also more into education, more invest to AI. I think at the end we will see an improvement of not only of education, but at the end quality in improvement of quality of services, not only financial services, but general services for the people. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And now I move on to a very specific application area of the professional services, especially in the law area. Mr. Spence, as your expertise lies there, I would just like to ask you, you already started this topic, and as far as I know, you also have some structured information, some kind of a case study for that. Do you think the AI applications in the professional services can offer more than only serving the customers, but maybe some kind of like creating new business opportunities or new business?
Yes, I do. We're currently working with a number of UK-based practices. There's different areas where this technology makes a difference. There's different areas. In terms of business development, which is the case study, business development for law is a very specific area, and the margin for error is not that high. It's relatively new. It's referred to for the tech guys on the call, sales enablement. So it's from the sales enablement part of AI. The other part where AI is making already a difference in law in the United Kingdom is streamlining processes. And it's mostly managing legal matters by exception. and by that process, it's linking the right lawyer to the right legal problem. It's not actually, the technology is quite advanced actually, but I don't think it's made the inroads into the legal sector that you might have expected. There's a variety of reasons for that. You need to be working from quite mature technology to engage with this technology. In many legal practices, their actual technology, to call it straight, wouldn't be advanced, say, as the banks. For again, that's for another day. But law tech is absolutely a sector, a long-term sector for this thinking to play into. It absolutely is. Barclays themselves have recently invested into a law tech incubator. That's how convinced they are in the sector. So I'd be quite happy to share what I know in the case study.
Mm-hmm. And maybe to extend this question even to the rest of the speakers, can this technology advancement somehow change the experience and the benefits for the customer for more reliability, privacy, security, transparency, and even accountability, which is also part of all the financial and professional services? Do you think this is necessary from the technological point of view, Mr. Guga? From your perspective, not only as a financial service, but also the documentation.
We see tremendous benefits, again, coming from the conversational AI space, using natural language processing, text mining, all of the capabilities, AI capabilities around this space. Huge potential. We've, in fact, worked with a couple of our partners here, strategic partners in the auditing space, where we looked at creating a bot for GDPR questions, looking at contracts and extracting data and helping lawyers and administrators actually sift through data, all that kind of stuff. And I think this was mentioned by Mr. Spencer. So I think there's huge potential there in collaboration with humans, obviously, because the technology just isn't that advanced to do exactly what it needs. And especially in the area of law, which language and context is hugely important. And you don't want to make a mistake, obviously. So that's super important. I think there can be advances, but I think it needs to be the proper balance, collaboration that will definitely save time, streamline processes, and have people working on the right areas that could advance this technology.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Illner, is this an issue for technology provider with such a wide portfolio as Oracle?
If you ask about if, from my point of view, the professional services could use AI, I cannot speak for law and law tech, right? This is completely outside my area of expertise. But professional services in IT, like consulting, I am afraid that they are very much underutilized regarding the AI. And mostly what I see is that the repeatability of the projects is very low, and the adoption of the standard, let's say, frameworks and the standardization where you could really apply ML is not so advanced like in the other sectors. So I would like to see more adoption of AI, and we are using internally some of them in Oracle, but I think this will take some more time.
Automation is mostly focused on those areas which have some kind of a repetitive processes, or because it cannot be automated while they are more individual, or isn't it the area what AI should solve?
Well, yes, but in the volume that you have, it's questionable if the investment into AI would justify that, right? That's what I see in the IT consulting at this moment, and of course also in the selling this type of projects. So there are some small use cases like identification of customers that with likely probability to for a project. But otherwise, I don't see much use of AI in the internal processes, in the checking how much the processes are compliant with the standards. I have not seen any so far.
Mr. Češínsky, what about your field? Do you think the combination of process automation and using AI can solve the problems maybe which are very unique for the human solutions so far, or how can it work?
Well, from my perspective, yes, I strongly believe that robotic process automation, or RPA, combined with AI, is the right way to solve many problems. And just a typical example, maybe you've been talking to with our clients and with some of the prospects as well, is like, so how can AI and robotic process automation can really make the difference to the society and make the difference to the business life of our clients as well, and how can everybody be on the winning end, not just somebody is winning and somebody lose. And we were kind of looking specifically at the sort of the pension funds situations, and what we found there is that if you effectively combine robotic process automation with AI, investment professionals can do the job much faster. You don't need so many of them. The data is processed much more efficiently, which effectively means that as a pension fund, you have lower operational costs. And as a result of that, you get improved margins as a company. And part of that margin improvement, you can push down to the end future pensioners, for example, and you can lower their fees. And, if you think about saving for pension for 30, 40 years, if you reduce, let's say, the annual fee you charge clients from 1% to, let's say, 0.8%, over 40 years, you end up saving 100,000 euros. And ultimately, in the environment or in the society where everybody is expected to live longer, and longevity is a major issue for in terms of the future liabilities for either state, if we're talking about the state pension or the private pension funds, you can really address that problem, because suddenly the pension money which are in your either private pool or a state pool are become much more significant and can last longer, even if people end up to live longer. So I think RPA and AI combined is really, really excellent thing to do. And the more we do of that, the better benefits for the society and for corporates in the EU and globally.
And if you compare the return on investment in such solutions, yes, the combination AI of RPA and the benefit it brings, especially based on such calculations of how much it saves, how can you maybe set up the schedule for applying or adopting such solutions on a much larger scale than so far, when it's really something really more unique, more exotic in the market?
Well, that's a great question. That's truly a great question. As a sales professional, that's the $64 million question. You're trying to communicate the return on investment of technology, which, as Mr. Ilner said earlier, it can be quite expensive. It can be quite expensive, and the benefit case might be unclear. Certainly, I like the pension fund case. It's pretty darn clear. Over 40 years, 0.2% is going to have a compound effect. But when you're introducing this technology and thinking where the financial benefit case is not so clear, it's not absolute. It's very hard to get this technology over the line in certain sectors, and and it's a problem. As a sales guy, it's a problem, because without the benefit case, without the case study, without being able to prove it, you can demonstrate the theories work, but I think getting AI and these processes accepted as mainstream. I think London. I hope Mr. He agrees with me on this. It's a bit more dynamic. People are aware that they've got to equip themselves with this thinking or face the consequence. But it is a hard argument to get over the line. I think I'd leave it at that. It's a hard argument to get over the line.
Through your practice, especially for the low tech, if the can the companies can only benefit from the more efficiency in their processes or the productivity they can perform, or is there any space for opening completely new space for their business, including sales, including sales as a professional service?
Without a doubt, we've found that is a space where this technology seems to make a disproportionate impact. Because let's say you're looking at a 200-man firm. If you could isolate the best practice of business development, the best business development behavior, the best business development processes, and then scale them out, then that's how to make sure your lawyers are using the right arguments in the right market that generates the right margin with the right type of client that we can do. And we can do that for banking as well. So that's actually an easier argument to get over the line than the argument of efficiency, effectiveness, and improving margin. So certainly business development, our experience in London is these algorithms are easier to engage with, possibly because with the impact of the pandemic in the UK, the legal sector is already looking at next year because they're going to have to recover what didn't take place this year. So in terms of business development, the use of algorithms it's an easier concept to explain, and it's an easier concept for a managing partner to buy into. That's for sure.
And so will there be, if we have maybe some kind of a more from the real world, less or more from what is only in the future visions, can the trade negotiations of the future be the fight of the two AI supported agents or machines, only on which one is on the higher level of the technology development?
Not quite now, but for sure, the person that's best equipped in the long run will get the best results.
Then, Mr. Štefanec, what to do with that? When?
I think when it's up to the business, I don't want to limit the development. It's up to the innovation and up to the business ideas. But I think it's very important if two AI machines compete, it's very important that on top of that is human being, that final decision making will be done by human being.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a nice issue. What about you, gentlemen? What do you think of it? Do you agree?
If I could just comment, certainly, yes, the human being, as I've already mentioned, is the key component in any of this AI stuff. We're just not right there yet, although we've made tremendous progress. But I think evolving beyond just providing customer support or decision support on the back end for low-level tasks, we already see some customers, more advanced customers that are a little more early adopter centric, moving into augmenting online marketing and sales, enhancing e-commerce and engagement. For example, we've built out a number of banner bots, banners that actually have chatbots in them, so you engage on an online marketing approach. This is really interesting to a lot of customers. Cross-selling services. Imagine a fraud alert was initiated with a chatbot. Customer had their card charged that didn't look regular. The customer could then actually block the card. So one of the standard transactions that happened. But then the bank would offer them insurance on their card because that happened to them. So that's cross-selling, upselling capabilities in a personalized fashion. Sentiment analysis, obviously understanding through conversations, are customers comfortable with a service or a product that bank or insurance company is providing, and if not, do they need to change either pricing or how that service is being offered to the customers? So doing early product design and service development just from the sentiment analysis or analysis of those conversations to help improve the overall customer experience. This is absolutely the direction that I see, certainly in the conversational AI space, our technology moving.
Mm-hmm. I noticed some agrees. Any comment to that?
Well,
maybe just
I can
briefly.
only agree.
Yeah, I mean, I agree as well. But I mean, what we have been describing so far is really the narrow AI. And I mean, if someone is saying that, yeah, and I mean, sometime in the future you will have business done by bots. You know, one company bot will be talking to other company bot, and they agree to some business contract, and they will follow on that. I think we are quite far away from it, because it's really the general AI we would have to have. And I mean, right now, all the use cases we are describing here are narrow AI, meaning, you know, the algorithm can solve one task, but cannot deal with multiple tasks that can come in a business negotiation. I think, you know, some people are saying that the general AI is 10 years away. Some people are saying that it's going to be 2-3 years away. So, I mean, you can take your guess, but I think what we need really for truly do the bot-to-bot business, I think or AI bot-to-bot business, you need really general AI, and I don't think we are there yet.
I agree.
Okay, gentlemen, the time is up, so thank you very much. And I hope, as we all agreed, the human beings still be important enough, so there will be no conferences of the bots in the future, and I hope we can see each other again. So thank you very much again, and have a great day. And let me invite you for another panel discussion after the break. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.